Hello, I'm Zachary McMillan. I'm a student at Campbell County High School, and I'm doing dual enrollment through Sheridan College. I did research on a study called Mono linked to a threefold increase in MS risk, and that was published on April 2nd of 2026. So it relates to our chapter 11, which dealt with movement and the disorders of movement. So we know that movement is a very complex system within the brain, and many scientists actually believe that the brain developed in order to coordinate our movement. And because movement is such a large and complex system, it has lots of room for error, and that's where the disorders of movement come in. And the study deals with one of the four movement disorders that was discussed in the textbook, and that is multiple sclerosis. And it also shows a potential driver of multiple sclerosis. So the study searched for a link between mononucleosis and multiple sclerosis. Mononucleosis is also called mono, and it's a very common disease. Its symptoms are sore throat, body ache, fever, and basically any symptom that accompanies the common cold. Its causes are pretty much narrowed down to the Epstein-Barr virus, which is a strain of the herpes virus, and it is also very common. It has no symptoms most of the time. However, it often leads to mono in older teens and adults. MS, or multiple sclerosis, is an autoimmune disease that attacks the myelin sheath. And the myelin sheath is the insulation that goes on the axon. And the axon is what connects neurons to each other. So that myelin sheath is both protection and it's almost like a catalyst. It helps the axon deliver signals efficiently and quickly. And when that demyelination happens, it leads to neurodegeneration, which is the loss of neurons, which in turn leads to muscle weakness and eventually muscle loss or loss of muscle function. So the method that the researchers used was so they analyzed two decades of medical records and broke that into two groups. One was the mono group, one was the control group. So they observed the mono group for 6 years and the control group for 8. And what they found was that the mono group had a 0.17% chance of developing MS. And that was 8 out of the 4,721 individuals, while the control group had a 0.07% chance of developing MS, and that was 10 out of the 14,163 individuals. So as you can see, contracting mono as an adult or a teenager increases one's chances of developing MS by around 300%, which is rather concerning. So looking at the real life applications of this study, they point towards avoidance of the Epstein-Barr virus. And because it's a very common virus, there's been a lack of concern about it. So, and this actually shows that because it leads to MS, there needs to be concern because MS is an incurable disease and leads to some very devastating effects. So the ways that we can avoid EBV are by basically avoiding sharing any bodily fluids with someone who's contracted it. So, and that includes drinks, food, toothbrushes, and is especially pertinent among romantic partners because of kissing, and you would want to avoid any unprotected sexual intercourse and just sharing any bodily fluids in general. So, my opinion on this, my thoughts basically point towards a vaccine. And I think it's rather concerning that there's not been a vaccine developed for the Epstein-Barr virus because it is a very common virus. I think that's because its symptoms aren't very extreme, so there hasn't been a very big concern about it. However, now that we know that it leads to an increased chance of MS later in life, I think that there should be an increased emphasis on that vaccination. This study, it leads one to question what other common diseases are connected to neural disorders, because looking at MS being, or not MS, the Epstein-Barr virus and mono being a very common disease, one wouldn't think that they would lead to something as serious as multiple sclerosis. That's an incurable sensory motor neuron disease. And that's all I have. So thanks for taking the time to listen to me. Thank you. Bye.